My name is Teresa Myers. I'm 33 years old. And the moment I stood up at that dinner table with a smile on my face, every single person in the room knew that nothing in our family would ever be the same. My husband had just announced, in front of both our families, that his mother was moving into my house, the house my parents saved 20 years to buy, the house with my maiden name on the deed. He'd given her keys. He'd given her a bedroom. And he'd given her $23,000 of our money through a company that didn't exist. He smiled at me like he expected applause. But what happened over the next 45 minutes would cost him his marriage, his mother, her dream house, and his sister, her free ride. To understand how we got to that table, I need to take you back 6 months. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This is where we share stories about family, boundaries, and the moments that test both. If anything in today's story hits close to home, drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I work as a nurse practitioner at Carilion Roanoke Memorial Hospital in Virginia. 3 night shifts a week, 12 hours each. I love what I do. There's something about being the calm in someone else's storm that fits me. But 12-hour nights don't leave much room for anything else. So I became the person who handled everything at home too. Bills, grocery runs, meal prep for the week, scheduling the oil change, remembering Grant's dentist appointment. If it needed doing, I did it. I used to think that was strength. I was organized. I was capable. If I didn't handle it, it didn't get handled, and I'd made peace with that. Grant, that's my husband, worked as a regional sales manager for a building materials company. Good income, decent hours, plenty of charm. He could walk into a room of strangers and leave with 3 new friends and a lunch invitation. I married him when I was 28. He was 30. We had a good first year. Quiet, comfortable, the kind of beginning that makes you think you chose well. And then there was the house. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, in a quiet subdivision just south of Roanoke. Maple tree in the front yard. A back patio where I'd drink coffee at 6 in the morning before the rest of the street woke up. It was more than I ever thought I'd have at 28. And it was a gift. The most generous one I've ever received. My parents bought it outright. No mortgage, paid in full. They handed me the keys at the closing table, and my mother cried so hard the notary offered her a tissue. That house was supposed to be my foundation. Instead, it became the thing that nearly broke me, and the thing that ultimately saved me. My dad is Warren Halloran. He's 61 now, retired, but for 35 years he was a plumber. Not the kind who runs a big company with a fleet of vans, the kind who crawls under houses at 6 in the morning with a wrench and a flashlight, comes home smelling like copper pipe and PVC glue, eats dinner, then drives out again for an emergency call at 10 at night. He drove the same truck for 14 years. My mom, June, worked the register at Kroger for 22 years. They weren't rich. They were disciplined. Every extra dollar went into a savings account they never touched. When I told them Grant proposed, my dad didn't say congratulations first. He said, "How's his credit?" That was Dad. 2 weeks before the wedding, my parents sat me down in their kitchen. My dad slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside was a deed to a house, the house in Roanoke, paid in cash, and the deed was in my name. Not Teresa Myers, Teresa Halloran, my maiden name. Next to the deed was a gift letter, notarized, dated, and signed by both parents. It read, "This property is gifted solely to Teresa June Halloran as her sole and separate property." My mom was already crying again. My dad looked at me and said, "This is yours, Reese. Not his, not theirs. Yours. Keep the paperwork somewhere safe." I thanked them. I hugged them. I thought my dad was being overly cautious, the kind of old-school worrying that comes from decades of fixing other people's broken pipes. I didn't realize he was being prophetic. I filed the deed and the gift letter in a fireproof lockbox in my closet, and didn't think about them again for 5 years. Grant was easy to love at first. He remembered small things. My coffee order, the song I played on repeat during nursing school, The fact that I hated cilantro? He sent flowers to the hospital on my birthday. He called my parents, mom and dad, within 6 months of dating. Charming is the word people used most often, and it fit. But charm has a shelf life when it's built on performance instead of principle. Year 1 was fine. Year 2, I started noticing a pattern. Every time Vivian called, his mother, Grant dropped everything. If we were mid-conversation, he'd hold up a finger and answer. If we were at dinner, he'd step outside. And every major decision ran through her first. New couch? Let me ask Mom what she thinks. Vacation dates? Mom wanted us to visit that week. I brought it up once, carefully. Grant, do you think your mom has a lot of influence on our decisions? He stared at me like I'd insulted his religion. She's my mother, Teresa. That summer, Vivian started visiting on weekends. Grant would invite her Friday afternoon, and she'd stay through Sunday. I didn't mind at first. She was pleasant enough, helped with dishes, brought banana bread. But by the third weekend in a row, I realized Grant hadn't asked me once. He'd just told me. Mom's coming Friday. I said, Grant, this is my house. I'd appreciate a heads up before you invite anyone to stay. He frowned. She's my mother, Teresa. She doesn't need an invitation. I looked at him. In my house, everyone needs an invitation, including your mother. He went quiet after that. Quiet, I would learn, was how Grant planned. Vivian Myers was 63, retired from a dental receptionist job she'd held for 20 years, and she carried a wound she never let anyone forget. 23 years ago, her husband Raymond walked out, left her with 2 kids, Grant, 12, and Courtney, 5, and a house she couldn't afford alone. The divorce was brutal. Raymond had a lawyer. Vivian didn't. She signed a settlement that gave him the house, the car, and the retirement account. She walked away with 2 suitcases and a custody agreement. I knew this story because Grant told it to me on our 3rd date, and Vivian retold it every Thanksgiving. It was her origin story, and she wore it like armor. By year 3 of our marriage, Vivian's visits had become more than visits. She started commenting on the house as if she were the project manager. This kitchen would look better with new cabinets. That wall color is too dark. Let me pick something lighter. Then she stopped asking. I came home from a shift one Tuesday and found new curtains in the living room. Cream lace, replacing the navy linen ones June and I had picked together. I bought those with my own money, Vivian said brightly. Consider it a gift. I asked Grant about the curtains. He sighed. Mom just wanted to help. Relax. The next Saturday, Vivian and I were alone in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, I was drying, and she said it. The first sentence I should have taken as a declaration of war. You married into this family. The house came with you. I put the dish towel down. The house didn't come with anyone, Vivian. My parents bought it. For me. She smiled, dried her hands, and walked into the living room without another word. She wasn't arguing. She was stating her belief. And beliefs, I would learn, are harder to fight than arguments. Courtney Myers was 28, Grant's younger sister, and the human equivalent of someone who borrows your umbrella and returns it broken without apologizing. She worked part-time as a receptionist at a hair salon in Salem and lived with Vivian in a 1-bedroom apartment 20 minutes from our house. Courtney didn't knock. She just appeared. I'm just dropping by, would turn into 4 hours on my couch, my refrigerator half empty, and a wet towel on the bathroom floor. She'd flip through my mail on the counter without thinking twice. She'd try on my jackets and forget to put them back. And one afternoon, I came home to find Courtney in my home office, the small room next to the master bedroom where I kept my laptop, patient reference materials, and personal documents. She was sitting in my chair, scrolling on her phone, feet up on my desk. I just needed a quiet spot to scroll, she said. Grant said I could use any room. I called Grant immediately. Did you tell Courtney she can use any room in my house? There was a pause. It's our house, Teresa. Stop acting like it's just yours. I hung up, walked back to the office, looked at Courtney. This room is off limits. To everyone. Courtney blinked. Okay. Geez. That evening, I installed a keyed lock on the office door. I paid for it myself, installed it myself, and kept both keys in my screwdriver drawer. Grant noticed. You locked the office? Seriously? Seriously. He shook his head. You're turning this house into a fortress. I looked at him. Then stop letting people walk through it without asking. He didn't respond. And a quiet Grant, I was learning, was far more dangerous than an angry one. 3 weeks later, I came home after a double night shift. 24 hours on my feet. 2 codes. 1 difficult family conversation in the ICU. All I wanted was a shower and 8 hours of silence. I walked past the guest room and stopped. The door was open. The room looked different. New bedding. A floral duvet I'd never seen. A small nightstand with a reading lamp and a glass of water. A framed photo of Grant and Vivian on the dresser. And in the corner, Vivian's suitcase. Unpacked. Clothes folded neatly in the open closet. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I found Grant in the kitchen eating cereal. What happened to the guest room? He didn't look up. Mom's been staying over more, so I made it comfortable for her. What's the big deal? The big deal is you redecorated a room in my house without asking me. He set his spoon down. Our house, Teresa. The deed says my name, Grant. Not ours. Not yours. Mine. I told him clearly, Vivian was welcome to visit, but this was not her room. Any changes to the house required my approval. Not his, not hers. If he wanted to redecorate, he could discuss it with me first like an adult. Grant's face went red. Not from embarrassment, from something harder. You sound like a landlord, not a wife. And you sound like a man who forgot whose name is on the title. He pushed back from the table, grabbed his keys, and left. That was the first time Grant compared me to a landlord. It wouldn't be the last. And it wouldn't be the worst thing he called me before this was over. 4 days later, I opened the mailbox and found an envelope from the locksmith shop on Williamson Road. Inside was a receipt, 3 key copies, house key, charged to Grant's debit card. I was still holding the receipt when Grant walked in from the garage. I held it up. What is this? He glanced at it, shrugged. I already gave Mom a copy of the key. Just like that. The way you'd say, I picked up milk. I stared at him. You gave a key to my house to your mother, without telling me. Stop saying my house. We're married. It's our house. The deed says otherwise, Grant. He walked past me. You and that deed. He went upstairs. I stood in the kitchen for 2 minutes. Then I picked up my phone and called the first locksmith in my contacts. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, every exterior lock on the house, front door, back door, garage entry, had been rekeyed. New keys, 2 copies, both mine. I put one on my keychain and one in the fireproof lockbox with the deed. The next afternoon, Vivian drove over for her usual visit. She stood at the front door for 3 minutes, turning her key, rattling the knob. Then she called Grant. I heard his phone ring from the living room. I heard him say, "What do you mean it doesn't work?" And then he looked at me. "Did you change the locks?" "Yes." "Teresa, if she needs to come over, she can knock. Like a guest." He opened his mouth, closed it, picked up his jacket, and drove to Vivian's apartment. I sat on the couch in my quiet house, alone, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Ownership. But I could already feel the ground shifting beneath the foundation. Grant wasn't the type to lose quietly. He was the type to find another way in. I want to pause here for a second, because I know some of you are watching this thinking, Teresa, why didn't you just leave? And the answer is, it was my house. I wasn't going to walk away from something my parents built their whole lives to give me. If you've ever had to fight for something that was already yours, you understand. Drop a comment below if you've been there. 2 weeks of cold silence. Grant slept in the guest room. Vivian's room, as he called it. He didn't argue about the locks again. Instead, he came home one evening with a small white box. "Smart lock," he said. "Yale. We can open the door from our phones. No more physical keys to fight about. I looked at the box. Looked at him. It wasn't a terrible idea on the surface, and that's what made it dangerous. Grant's worst moves always looked reasonable. Fine, I said. But I'm the primary admin. No one else gets access without my approval. Of course, he said. He installed it that weekend. I set up the app, confirmed admin access, Teresa Myers, primary administrator, Grant Myers, secondary user, 2 users. I checked 3 times. Just 2. I thought I had it covered. I thought the digital lock was something I could monitor in real time, better than a physical key I couldn't track. And technically, I was right. The app logged every unlock event with a name and timestamp. What I didn't account for was that Grant was also an admin. And admin rights included the ability to add new users without notification. No alert. No pop-up. No confirmation request to the other admin. He could add anyone he wanted, and I wouldn't know unless I manually checked the user list. I didn't check for 2 weeks. I was pulling extra shifts. One of the ICU nurses was on maternity leave, and I'd volunteered to cover. 3 night shifts became 4. 4 became 5. I was exhausted, running on coffee and momentum. And Grant, it turned out, had been waiting for exactly that kind of exhaustion, because tired people don't check the app, and Grant was counting on it. Vivian called me directly for the first time, not through Grant. My phone rang at 7 in the morning, right after I got home from a shift. Her voice was different, softer, almost rehearsed. Teresa, honey, I just want us to be a family. I'm not trying to take anything from you. She talked about getting older, about her apartment being too cold in winter, about the loneliness of eating dinner alone every night for 23 years. I just don't want to spend my last years alone in that apartment, she said. There was a crack in her voice that sounded real. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in scrubs, still smelling like hospital disinfectant, and I listened. I let her finish. Then I said, Vivian, you're welcome to visit, but this house has one owner, and that's me. I'd be happy to help you look into senior living options, something with community, activities, people your age. Silence. Then the mask fell. Senior living? I'm 63, not 80. Grant would never let you send me to one of those places. I'm not sending you anywhere. I'm offering to help. There's a difference. She hung up. No goodbye. That night, Grant didn't come home until almost midnight. He walked in smelling like cigarettes and lavender air freshener. Vivian's apartment. He didn't say a word to me. Just went straight to the guest room and closed the door. I sat in the kitchen with a glass of water and thought about what Vivian had said. I just want us to be a family. It sounded warm, generous even. But what she meant was, I want what you have. And she wasn't asking. A week later, Vivian showed up on a Saturday afternoon. Grant let her in. She was carrying a shoebox. Not a new one, an old one, held together with a rubber band. She sat down at the kitchen table and opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, faded, creased, some with water stains. She spread them across the table like playing cards. One photo stopped me. A 2-story colonial with green shutters, a wraparound porch, and a swing set in the side yard. Salem, Virginia. In front of the house stood Vivian, maybe 40, dark hair, smiling wide, and Grant, about 10 years old, holding a baseball glove. That was our house, Vivian said quietly. 4 bedrooms. I painted every room myself. She turned the photo over. On the back, in pencil. First Christmas, 1998. Then she told me the rest. The day she packed the car, Grant was 12. He carried his pillow and a backpack with 3 comic books. Courtney was in the car seat, too young to understand. Grant sat in the back and asked, Mom, are we ever going home? Vivian looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. And for a moment, a real, honest moment, I saw her. Not the woman who changed my curtains or demanded a key. just a mother who lost her house and never recovered. "So you understand," she said. "Don't be selfish, Teresa. You have parents who buy you houses. I had nothing." I picked up the photo of the Salem house and handed it back to her. "I'm sorry for what you went through, truly, but taking my house won't undo what happened to yours." She blinked, took the photo, put it back in the shoebox, snapped the rubber band around it, and left without saying goodbye. From that moment, something changed in the way Vivian looked at me. The hurt was still there, but it had sharpened into something harder. Tuesday. Shift ended at 7 in the morning. I drove home with the windows down, trying to stay awake long enough to shower and eat something before collapsing. I opened the front door and smelled coffee. Fresh coffee. In my kitchen. Courtney was asleep on the living room couch, wrapped in one of my throw blankets. My laptop was open on the coffee table. Not on a browser, just the lock screen, but moved from my office. A plate with toast crumbs sat on the arm of the sofa. The fridge had been raided. Leftover pasta gone, half the deli turkey, both yogurts. I stood in my own living room and felt like a stranger. Then I checked the smart lock app. Activity log. Courtney Myers unlocked front door. 2:13 p.m. I had never given Courtney access. I called Grant. He picked up on the fourth ring, groggy. "How does Courtney have access to the smart lock?" Pause. She asked me. "It's just for convenience, Teresa." "You added your sister to my lock without telling me, after I specifically said no one else gets access. You're overreacting. I'm asking you a direct question. Did you or did you not add her?" "Yes, I did. She's family." I opened the app. Removed Courtney's access. Right there, standing in the living room, while Courtney blinked awake on the couch. "What's happening?" Courtney asked, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "You're in my house without my permission," I said. "That's what's happening." Courtney looked at me like I'd slapped her. "Grant said, Grant doesn't own this house, I do, and I didn't invite you." She left 20 minutes later, barefoot to the car, shoes in hand, texting furiously. I reset the admin settings on the lock. Removed Grant's admin privileges. Set myself as sole administrator. One admin, one authority. No exceptions. Grant gave me the silent treatment for 3 days. Then the campaign started. He sat me down on a Wednesday evening with a look that was supposed to pass for hurt, but landed closer to strategy. "My mother cried all night because you humiliated Courtney." I said nothing. "You're tearing this family apart, Teresa. Your parents have poisoned you against my family." "My parents haven't said a word about your family." "Then why are you acting like this? Like we're enemies?" "Because you added someone to my lock behind my back." Again. He stood up. "Fine. Be the gatekeeper. Be the warden." He slept in the guest room. Stopped contributing to the joint bills. Not gradually. All at once. The auto transfer from his paycheck into our shared checking account just stopped. I noticed after 2 weeks because I was the one who tracked every line item on the statement. The balance was dropping faster than it should have been. I pulled up 3 months of statements online. Grant's automatic transfer, the amount we'd agreed on for shared expenses, hadn't come through since April. 3 months. No transfer. No explanation. No mention. I printed the statements, highlighted the missing deposits, found Grant in the garage. "Where's the money, Grant?" He looked up from his phone. "What money?" "Your share of the bills. 3 months. Nothing transferred." "I've been paying for Mom's things. She needs help too." "How much help?" "I don't know. A few hundred here and there." I held up the statements. "This isn't a few hundred, Grant. This is over $5,000 missing in 3 months." He looked at the papers, looked away. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." But his jaw was tight, and his hands were in his pockets, which is what Grant always did when he was lying. I waited until Grant left for work the next morning. Then I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, a cup of coffee, and every bank statement I could access for our joint checking account going back 8 months. I wasn't looking for a few hundred here and there. I was looking for a pattern. It took me 40 minutes to find it. Starting in January, there were recurring charges to a vendor called Myers Home Solutions. The amounts varied: $2,600 in January, $3,200 in February, $4,800 in March. Each charge was categorized as home improvement, contractor. I'd never heard of Myers Home Solutions. I'd never seen a contractor at our house. I opened a browser and searched the name. No website, no Google listing, no Yelp reviews, no physical address. Just a Virginia LLC filing with the State Corporation Commission. Registered agent, Grant A. Myers. Filed 8 months ago. I leaned back in my chair. Then I got up, walked through the house, and looked at every room. The roof Grant supposedly had repaired. No new shingles, no evidence of work. The hardwood floors he'd allegedly had refinished. Same scuff marks I'd been looking at for 5 years. The plumbing repairs. My father had done those himself last spring, free of charge, on a Sunday afternoon. Every invoice was for work that never happened. Every dollar went somewhere I couldn't trace from a bank statement alone. I didn't confront Grant that night. I made dinner. I asked about his day. I listened to him talk about a sales quota and a difficult client. And after he went to bed, I opened a new browser tab, typed Divorce Attorney, Roanoke, Virginia, and started reading reviews. Because confrontation without evidence is just a fight. And I wasn't interested in fighting. I was interested in winning. 3 days later, I found it. Grant had a small desk in the corner of the guest room, Vivian's room. Bottom drawer, locked. I'd given him a spare key to that desk years ago, back when we still shared everything. He'd forgotten. I hadn't. I opened the drawer during my lunch break on a day Grant was in Richmond for a sales meeting. Inside, a stack of LLC operating documents, a checkbook for an account I'd never seen, and one bank statement. The statement was from Cardinal Community Credit Union, not our bank. The account was a savings account. Account holder, Vivian M. Myers. Balance as of the most recent statement, $19,400. I scanned the transaction history. Deposits arrived like clockwork. Every month, between the 15th and 20th. Source: electronic transfer from Myers Home Solutions, LLC. January, $2,600. February, $3,200. March, $4,800. April, $3,400. May, $2,900. June, $4,200. July, $2,300. Total, $23,400. Every dollar matched the charges on our joint account. Every deposit corresponded to an invoice for renovation work that was never performed on a house Grant didn't own. I held that bank statement for 3 minutes. 3 minutes was all it took to decide the rest of my life. I photographed every page, the statement, the LLC documents, the checkbook, sent them to my personal email. Then I placed everything back in the exact position I'd found it. Same stack order, same angle, drawer locked. Key back in the screwdriver drawer. I drove back to the hospital for my afternoon shift. Parked in the garage, sat in my car for 5 minutes with both hands on the steering wheel. I wasn't crying. I'd do that later, alone, in this same parking spot, at 2 in the morning after a shift. Right now, I was calculating. Ellen Park's office was on the second floor of a brick building on Church Avenue, above a sandwich shop. She was 45, direct, and had the kind of calm that comes from spending 2 decades untangling other people's marriages. I sat across from her desk during my lunch break the next day and laid everything out. The deed, the gift letter from my parents, 6 months of joint account statements with the Myers Home Solutions charges highlighted, the photographs of Vivian's bank statement. Ellen put on reading glasses, went through each document, and didn't speak for a full 5 minutes. Then she looked up. The house is your separate property. The deed is in your maiden name. The gift letter is notarized and dated before the marriage. He has 0 claim. I exhaled. What about the LLC? Dissipation of marital assets. He moved joint funds to his mother through a fabricated company. A forensic accountant can trace every dollar, and a judge will want to see that trace. She wrote a name on a sticky note and slid it across the desk. Sandra Okafor, forensic accountant, specializes in divorce cases. Call her today, Ellen said. She'll need your bank records, the LLC filing, and anything else you can provide. Timeline is about 3 weeks for a case this straightforward. The trail isn't hidden. It's just unexamined. I looked at the sticky note. And the divorce? I can have the petition drafted by end of week. You file when you're ready. But Teresa, don't tip your hand. Don't confront him. Don't change any account access. Let the forensic work finish first. I nodded. 3 weeks. 3 weeks? I shook her hand, walked downstairs, bought a sandwich I didn't eat, and drove back to work. 3 weeks. I just needed to keep everything normal for 3 weeks. I need to stop here for a moment, because the hardest part wasn't finding the evidence. It was sitting across from Grant every night, eating dinner, asking about his day, knowing exactly where the money was going. 3 weeks of watching someone lie to your face while you hold the proof in your bag. If you've ever had to play the long game, you know what that costs. Like and subscribe if you're with me. 21 days. I counted every one. I went to work. I came home. I made pasta on Tuesdays, chicken on Thursdays. I asked Grant about his sales numbers. He started warming up, eating dinner at the table again instead of the guest room, making small talk, even bringing me coffee one morning before my shift. He thought I'd given up. He thought the fight about keys and locks and access had burned itself out, and I'd accepted the new normal. I let him think that. Meanwhile, I met Sandra Okafor twice. She worked from a small office on Franklin Road, and she was thorough in a way that reminded me of the attending physicians I most respected. No drama, just precision. She pulled the LLC's full filing history from the Virginia State Corporation Commission, cross-referenced every invoice amount with corresponding withdrawals from our joint account, matched deposit dates to Vivian's savings account at Cardinal Community Credit Union. Her findings were worse than I expected. Beyond the $23,400 in fabricated invoices, Grant had opened a credit card in the LLC's name. Balance, $6,200. Charges included a laptop, a leather recliner, 2 months of a storage unit rental, and a flat-screen television. None of those items were in our house. Sandra laid it out plainly. There's no ambiguity. 11 fabricated invoices, each corresponding to renovation work that was never performed at your residential address. Total misappropriated from the joint account, $23,400, plus $6,200 in undisclosed credit card debt linked to the LLC entity. She handed me the report. 14 pages, stapled, tabbed, with exhibits. I held it in my lap and felt its weight. Not the paper, the truth. The whole truth. Documented, verified, and ready. Thursday evening. Grant sat down at the kitchen table with the serious face he usually saved for his sales presentations. Teresa, I've been thinking. I set down my glass. About what? Mom's apartment lease is up next month. I want her to move in with us. Permanently. He said it the way someone presents a finished decision. Not a question, not a discussion, a conclusion. I kept my voice neutral. Move in? She's my mother. She's alone. The guest room is already set up. It just makes sense. That's a big decision, Grant. It's the right decision. Does your mother know? He smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. She's excited. She's already started packing. Already started packing. Before he'd asked me. Before I'd agreed. Before anyone had consulted the person whose name was on the deed. Already packing? I repeated. Before you even asked me. Grant leaned forward. Teresa, you married into this family. This house is big enough. Don't make this about ownership. There it was again. The line. His mother's words coming out of his mouth. I looked at him across the table. Thought about the 14-page report in my bag. Thought about Ellen Park's advice. Don't tip your hand. Thought about Sandra Okafor's charts and spreadsheets. Then I said something that surprised him. Okay, let's talk about it at dinner this weekend. I want both families there. Grant blinked. Both families? Your mom, Courtney, my parents. All of us at the table. If we're going to make a big family decision, we should do it together. His face lit up. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll set it up. He went to bed happy that night. I stayed up until 1 in the morning, going over Sandra's report page by page. Friday morning, I called my dad. Dad, I need the original deed and the gift letter, and I need you and Mom at dinner tomorrow night. Silence. Then, is everything okay, Reese? It will be, I promise. Just bring the documents. The originals? The originals. He didn't ask anything else. That was my father. When his daughter asked for something specific, he delivered it. No interrogation, no fuss, just action. At noon, I had my final meeting with Ellen Park. She handed me the draft petition for divorce. 12 pages. She'd also prepared a motion to preserve separate property, a legal filing that would formally establish my house as outside the marital estate. You file Monday morning, she said. The Roanoke City Circuit Court Clerk's office opens at 8:30. Bring the petition, the property motion, and copies of Sandra's forensic report. And Saturday night? Saturday night, you tell him, in front of witnesses. Let his reaction be his reaction. You stay calm, you state facts, and you leave the emotions to him. I nodded. She looked at me over her glasses. Teresa, you've done everything right. The house is yours. The money trail is documented. The only thing you need to do Saturday is tell the truth. I drove home with 3 things in the passenger seat: Ellen's petition, Sandra's report, and the folder I'd been carrying in my bag for 2 weeks. At home, I put everything into a manila folder. Thick, heavy with paper and consequence. I hung my bag on the hook behind the kitchen door, the folder inside, and started prepping dinner for the next day. Chicken marsala, Vivian's favorite, because there's something satisfying about cooking a beautiful meal for someone who's about to have a very bad evening. Saturday, I was up at 6, cleaned the house, set the dining table with the good plates, not Vivian's china, mine, polished the glasses, put fresh flowers on the sideboard, cooked all day. Grant hovered, cheerful, unhelpful. Mom is so excited, he said around noon, sampling the marsala sauce with a spoon. She's bringing her good china. That's nice, I said. Vivian arrived at 5. She walked through the front door carrying a box of dishes wrapped in cloth napkins, the china from her old house in Salem, the only nice thing she'd kept from that life. Courtney followed with 2 overnight bags. I thought I'd stay the weekend since we're celebrating, she said, dropping the bags by the stairs. Celebrating? I asked. Grant said you agreed to let Mom move in, Courtney said. This is going to be so great. I can come visit all the time. I looked at Courtney. Looked at Grant. He was in the kitchen, pretending not to hear. He said that, I said. Not a question. My parents arrived at 5:30. My dad carried a brown envelope tucked under his arm. My mom carried a pecan pie and a face that said she already knew something was wrong. June had instincts like that. 30 years of reading faces at a checkout counter. Warren shook Grant's hand, kissed Vivian on the cheek, sat down at the table like a man who'd been told to show up and keep quiet. 7 people around a table meant for 8. Grant at the head, Vivian to his right, beaming. Courtney beside her, scrolling her phone. Warren and June on the left side, close together. And me, at the other end, with a bag on the hook behind me and 14 pages inside it. Dinner was pleasant. Vivian complimented the marsala 3 times. Courtney asked for seconds. Grant refilled wine glasses and made a joke about needing a bigger table. My parents ate quietly, Warren chewing slowly, June watching everything. After the plates were cleared and coffee was poured, Grant tapped his glass with a fork. The room went still. I have an announcement, he said. He stood up, one hand on the table, the other on the back of Vivian's chair. Mom's lease is ending next month, and Teresa and I have agreed that she should move in with us, permanently. Vivian clasped her hands together. Her eyes were shining. Courtney clapped twice. This is happening, Grant continued. We're going to convert the study into a sitting room for Mom. Give her some real space. And Courtney, you're welcome here anytime. I've already ordered a new key set for the front lock. He looked at me. That salesman's smile. That confident tilt of the chin. Right, babe? Every pair of eyes in the room turned to me. Vivian, expectant. Courtney, grinning. Grant, already celebrating. Warren, still as stone. June, holding her coffee cup with both hands. I set my napkin on the table, pushed my chair back, stood up, and smiled. Not a forced smile. Not a nervous one. The kind that comes from being ready. Truly ready. For a moment you've been building toward for 3 weeks. Grant, I said. My voice was even, steady. The same voice I use in the ICU when a family is falling apart and someone needs to hold the room together. I'm glad everyone is here, because there's something I need to say about this house. I reached behind my chair and took the manila folder from my bag, set it on the table, opened it. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. This is the deed to this house, I said, holding up the first document. It's recorded with the Roanoke City Circuit Court. The owner listed is Teresa June Halloran. My maiden name. Not Teresa Myers, not Grant and Teresa. Just me. Grant's smile faltered. Teresa, what are you doing? I'm responding to your announcement. I set the deed down and picked up the second document. This is the notarized gift letter from my parents, dated 2 weeks before our wedding. It states, and I'll read the key line. This property is gifted solely to Teresa June Halloran as her sole and separate property. I looked at my father. Dad, would you like to confirm? Warren cleared his throat. Every word. Your mother and I saved for that house for 20 years. We bought it for you. Not for anyone else at this table. Vivian's face had gone white. Her hands were flat on the table, pressing down like she was holding herself in place. Grant took a step forward. Teresa, this isn't the time. You chose the time, Grant. You stood up in front of both families and announced that your mother was moving into my house. A house you don't own. A house you've never had your name on. A house my parents paid for in full before we were married. I paused. Let that settle. Then I looked at the folder. But the house isn't even the worst part. I pulled out Sandra Okafor's report. 14 pages, tabbed, with bank records in the exhibits. Over the past 8 months, I said, Grant created a company called Myers Home Solutions LLC, a company with no employees, no office, and no clients. He billed our joint checking account 11 times for renovation work on this house, renovation work that was never performed. I turned to the first exhibit page, read the figures calmly, like a nurse reading vitals. $3,200 for a roof repair that never happened. I looked up at the ceiling. Same roof. $4,800 for hardwood floor refinishing. I looked at the floor. Same floors since we moved in. $2,600 for plumbing work. I looked at my father. Dad, you fixed the plumbing yourself last spring, didn't you? Warren nodded. A Sunday afternoon. Took me 3 hours. Free of charge, I added. Total billed to our joint account through this fake company, $23,400. Every dollar deposited into a savings account at Cardinal Community Credit Union. I looked at Vivian. In your name. The color drained from Vivian's face in stages, like watching a tide go out. Grant's mouth was moving, but nothing was coming out. He gripped the back of his chair. Teresa, stop. You don't understand what... I understand perfectly, Grant. I have 14 pages of bank records, LLC filings, and a forensic accountant's analysis that says exactly what happened. You created a shell company. You invoiced our joint account for work that was never done, and you funneled the money to your mother. Courtney looked at Grant. What company? Grant, what is she talking about? Grant didn't answer her. He was staring at the report in my hands like it was a weapon, which, in a way, it was. Grant tried to regroup. He straightened up, ran a hand through his hair, and pointed at me. "This is ridiculous. You went through my things? You hired someone to investigate me? My own wife?" "I reviewed our joint checking account," I said. I was still standing, still calm, still holding the report. "I'm a co-holder on that account. I have every right to review it. And when I found $23,000 missing, I hired a forensic accountant. The same kind of professional that divorce courts rely on every day." "Divorce courts?" His voice cracked. "Teresa." Vivian's hand slammed the table. "Grant, tell her she's wrong. Tell her this is a misunderstanding." Grant looked at his mother, then at me. He said nothing. "Grant?" Vivian's voice was high now. "Tell her." Courtney pushed back from the table slowly. "Wait. The LLC? Is that why you asked me to sign that form last month? You said it was for your work." Grant's head snapped toward her. "Courtney, shut up. Don't talk to her like that," June said from across the table. It was the first time my mother had spoken all evening. Warren put his hand on June's arm, not to stop her, just to be close. Vivian turned on me. "You ungrateful girl, after everything this family has done for you." I tilted my head. "What has this family done for me, Vivian? I'm asking a genuine question. Your son stole from me. Your daughter slept in my house without permission. And you've been collecting $23,000 of my money in a savings account. So please, tell me what your family has done for me." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The silence in that room was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I set the report on the table and placed both hands flat beside it. "I've spoken with a family law attorney. I'm filing for divorce on Monday morning." The room didn't gasp. It froze. Grant's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and something that might have been fear, all in the space of a breath. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "Over money?" "Over trust, Grant. Over the fact that you created a fake company to steal from our joint account and gave the money to your mother. Over the fact that you gave away keys to my house, added people to my lock, and announced your mother was moving in, all without asking the person who owns this house." He took a step toward me. "We can fix this. We can talk about this. We are talking about it. Right now. In front of both families. Exactly the way you made your announcement. In front of everyone. Without asking me first." "Teresa, please." "My lawyer will be filing a motion to preserve this home as separate property. The deed, the gift letter, and the absence of any commingling make that straightforward. She'll also be submitting the forensic report documenting dissipation of marital assets through Myers Home Solutions, LLC. I paused. "You should get a lawyer, Grant. A real one." Vivian stood up from her chair, shaking. "Grant, do something." Grant looked at his mother. For the first time, he didn't jump at her command. He just stood there, hands at his sides, jaw working, staring at the report on the table like it might catch fire if he looked at it long enough. "Vivian," I said, "I need to say something to you directly." The room went completely still. I looked at Vivian across the table. She was standing now, one hand on the back of her chair, the other pressed against her sternum like she was trying to hold herself together. "I know what happened to you 23 years ago," I said. "I know you lost your house. I know Grant was 12 years old and scared. I know Courtney was too young to understand. And I'm sorry, genuinely sorry, that no one was there to help you fight for what was yours." Vivian's chin trembled. Her eyes filled. For a single, suspended second, she was the woman in the photograph, standing in front of a house in Salem with green shutters and a son who still believed she could fix anything. "But what happened to you," I said, "does not give you the right to take what isn't yours. My parents worked 20 years for this house. My father crawled under other people's homes for 3 decades, so I could have one of my own. My mother stood behind a register for 22 years and never complained once, and you and Grant tried to take it. With keys, with locks, with fake invoices, and with $23,000 that didn't belong to either of you. I stood straight, hands steady, voice the same volume it had been since I started speaking. You told me once that I married into this family, that the house came with me. But here's the truth. I married Grant. The house was mine before, during, and after. Vivian slammed both hands on the table. Plates rattled, coffee sloshed. You have no idea what it's like to lose everything. I looked at her. You're right. I don't. Because I refuse to let it happen. Grant exploded. Theresa, you're destroying this family. He was shouting now, full volume, face red, veins visible on his neck. The salesman was gone. The charming son-in-law was gone. Over what? Some paperwork? Some money? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. $23,000 isn't some money, Grant. It's what my dad earns in 5 months of crawling under houses fixing other people's pipes. Warren flinched. June pressed her hand over his. Grant jabbed a finger at me. I did it for us, for our family. You did it for your mother, with money from our joint account, through a company that doesn't exist, on invoices for work that was never performed. That's not family, Grant. That's fraud. Courtney stood up quietly, picked up her purse. I'm going to the car. Grant whipped around. Courtney, sit down. No. She didn't look at him. She walked to the front door, opened it, and left it open behind her. The night air came in. Cool. Early October. Grant looked around the table. His mother, shaking. His sister, gone. My father, stone-faced. My mother, crying silently. And me, still standing in the same spot. Same posture, same volume. Grant, I said, I don't hate you. But I will never trust you again. And I will not share my home with someone who steals from me and lies about it. He grabbed his wine glass off the table and hurled it at the wall behind me. It missed by a foot, shattered against the wainscoting. Red wine splattered across the white tablecloth, the wall, and the floor. I didn't flinch. It's over, Grant. I looked at Grant one last time. You gave her a key. You gave her access to the lock. You gave her $23,000 of our money, and none of it was yours to give. He stood there, jaw clenched, wine dripping down the wall behind me. He had nothing left. No argument, no charm, no angle. Just a man standing in a house that was never his, caught by the woman he thought would never check the receipts. Vivian steadied herself against the table and pushed to standing. I'm calling a lawyer. I'd recommend it, I said. Make sure it's one you can afford. She turned to collect her china dishes, the ones she'd brought from Salem, the ones wrapped in cloth napkins, the last nice things from her old life. She picked up the stack. Her hands were shaking so badly that the top plate slid. It dropped onto the kitchen tile. Porcelain on stone. A clean, sharp crack that echoed through the room. Nobody moved. Vivian looked at the broken plate. Cream-colored, gold rim, a faded floral pattern. Then she looked at me. You'll regret this. I met her eyes. No, Vivian. I won't. I straightened the papers on the table, set the report squarely on top of the deed and the gift letter, and said the last thing I needed to say in that room. A home isn't something you just deserve, it's something you earn. Vivian walked out. Grant followed. Courtney was already in the car, engine running. The front door closed behind them. The house was quiet. The wine was still dripping down the wall. And I was still standing at the table, hands steady, heart pounding, but not a single tear on my face. Not yet. 10 seconds of silence. Then my mother's voice, small and careful. Reese, are you okay? I sat down. My legs were steady, but my hands had started to tremble, the adrenaline wearing off, the way it does after a code in the ICU, when the patient is stable and your body finally remembers to shake. I will be. Warren got up from his chair, walked to the broken plate on the kitchen floor, knelt down, 61 years old with 2 bad knees, and started picking up the pieces one by one. June joined him. They didn't say anything. They just worked. The way they'd always worked. quietly, together, without being asked. I watched my parents kneeling on the floor of the house they'd bought me, cleaning up porcelain that belonged to a woman who'd tried to take it from me. It was the last time anyone would clean up after the Myers family in my home. Warren dropped the pieces into the trash can, straightened up, put his hands on the counter, and looked at me across the kitchen. I knew there was a reason I put the deed in your maiden name. I almost laughed. Almost. You did good, Reese. Your granddad would have been proud. We sat together at the half-empty table and ate pecan pie. The flowers were still on the sideboard. The wine stain was drying on the wall. Grant's chair was pushed back at an angle. But the house felt different. Lighter. Like a window had been left open and a draft was pushing out something stale. My mother asked me if I wanted to cry. I told her I'd already done my crying. Alone, in the hospital parking garage, 3 weeks ago, the night I found that bank statement. This evening wasn't for crying. This evening was for finishing. Monday morning, 8:30 sharp, I was at the Roanoke City Circuit Court clerk's office with Ellen Park. We filed a petition for legal separation and a motion to preserve separate property. Sandra's forensic report was submitted as Exhibit A. Grant was served at his office on Tuesday afternoon. His lawyer, a solo practitioner in Vinton, called Ellen that week. The conversation was short. Ellen told me later. His attorney reviewed the documentation. He advised Grant not to contest the property claim. The house was never seriously in dispute. The deed was clean. The gift letter was notarized. I'd never added Grant to the title. I'd paid property taxes and insurance from my personal checking account, not the joint account. There was nothing to commingle. Grant moved out that same week. Virginia requires 6 months of separation before you can file for an absolute divorce when there are no children, so I waited. We signed a separation agreement in month 2. Ellen filed the divorce petition on the first eligible day. The equitable distribution hearing took 3 hours. The judge reviewed the forensic report. Grant was ordered to reimburse $23,400 from his share of the remaining joint assets. The $6,200 in LLC credit card debt was assigned entirely to him. Vivian's savings account was subject to a constructive trust claim. Ellen negotiated a settlement. Vivian returned $15,000. The remaining $4,400 she'd withdrawn as cash was written off. Grant didn't fight it. His lawyer told him he had no ground to stand on, and fighting would only add legal fees he couldn't afford. The divorce was granted 9 months after that Saturday dinner. I kept the house. I kept my career. I kept the maple tree my father planted in the front yard the day I moved in. Grant moved into Vivian's 1-bedroom apartment in Salem. The same kind of apartment she'd been trying to escape for 23 years. The last time I saw him, he was loading boxes into a rental truck in my driveway. He didn't look at me. I watched from the kitchen window until he pulled away. Then I locked the front door and made coffee. The first weekend alone was quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not empty quiet, clean quiet. The kind that comes after you've stopped holding your breath. I walked through every room. In the guest room, I stripped the floral bedding Vivian had picked out, folded it neatly, and placed it in a donation box by the front door. I put fresh white sheets on the bed, the ones I'd originally bought, the ones that had been in the linen closet for 2 years. The study door was open. No lock needed anymore. I set my laptop back on the desk, put my reference materials on the shelf, and sat in my chair for the first time in months without feeling like I was trespassing in my own home. In the kitchen, I took down the cream lace curtains Vivian had hung and put back the navy linen ones, the ones my mother and I had picked together the week I moved in. They still fit. I opened the smart lock app on my phone, went to settings, removed all users, changed the master code, set myself as sole administrator. 1 user, 1 code, 1 key. That afternoon, I drove to the garden center on Hirschberger Road and bought a flat of marigolds. My father's suggestion. Your grandmother always had marigolds in front of her house, kept the bugs away and the neighbors smiling. I planted them along the front walkway in the October sun, hands in the dirt, knees on the grass my parents paid for. When I finished, I took a photo of the front of the house, marigolds blooming, porch light on, my car in the driveway, nobody else's. I texted it to my dad with one line. I kept it, Dad. He didn't reply for an hour. Then, a thumbs up emoji. Good. Here's what I learned. A home isn't just walls and a roof. It's the boundary you draw around everything you've worked for. And no one, not a husband, not a mother-in-law, not guilt, not sympathy, gets to erase that boundary without your permission. My parents didn't just give me a house. They gave me a lesson. Know what's yours, protect it with paperwork, and never apologize for refusing to hand it over. That's my story. One dinner table, one folder, and a house that stayed exactly where it belonged. If this story reminded you to check whose name is on your deed, or to keep your separate property separate, take that as a sign. Do it today. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.